Daniel, one of our fans recently wrote in and he said, I struggle with decoy placement. It seems like no matter what, birds hang up just outside the decoys or they don't decoy at all. I've got plenty of water movement. I just can't seem to decoy the ducks. What advice would you have for him?
Well, the advice is that I have is don't be discouraged, because the later in the season you get, the more weary these ducks are about decoy setup. So you're just going to have to constantly be adjusting your decoys until you see what the birds are comfortable with. This past weekend I went out 2 days in a row, and I was constantly working the birds and moving my decoys around and to what they felt comfortable with. So really it's all situational. Just try not to get discouraged, and you just have to experiment as the season progresses. So let's just be patient. That's my one word of advice for you.
There you go. Well, awesome. Well, thanks. Welcome everybody. Eric Wilkes here with Duck Hunting Fanatics, and I have on the phone with me here, or on the line with me here, Daniel Mancine of Mancine Outdoors. Daniel, what'd you see up in your neck of the woods this week?
Well, it was slow for a lot of guys. I had one of my best weekends yet, and yeah, there's for me there was plenty of birds moving around, but that's just not the migration that seasoned hunters are used to seeing. There's not tons of birds moving. It's been warm. The weather's been good. It's been slow for a lot of guys. Not too bad for me per se, but I'm also not putting down 2 or 3 limits a day with guys like they're used to. But I did some good work this weekend.
That's awesome, man. It's always good to get out and smash some birds. Some weekends are good, some weekends are not so good. And I know I've talked to a couple other guys across the country, and it just seems like things are slowing down. And where I am here in Wisconsin, our seasons are all but over. We've got a little bit of goose season left, but for the most part, the birds have moved all the way through here. So it's great to at least hear that there's some other areas in the country that are still having some good success. We've talked a lot this week about decoys. How do you go about spreading your decoys?
So one of the good things I got to experience this weekend is this place I was hunting. I was on this lake, and there was 3 blinds on it, and I got to see different setups versus my own. And I had one guy out there. He had an extremely large decoy setup, kind of all sporadic, nothing particular. He didn't really have any landing zones for the ducks, and he was just calling at everything that was in the air. And the guy that was probably 100 yards, maybe 200 yards to his left, he had a little bit smaller spread, a couple landing zones, and he was pretty quiet. But I had the smallest setup. I just ran a J decoy spread. I had on the long side I only ran 6 decoys, and 2 of them being on a jerk rig, and on the short side I was running 3 decoys and a lucky duck spinner. And those guys were I shot 3 times as many birds as they did. They didn't like the calling. They didn't like the large decoy spreads. They came into the small, into the wind. Setting your landing zone in accordance with the wind is very important. So they had somewhere comfortable to land, and it worked out for us.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that always makes you feel good too when the ducks are coming to your spread, and they're avoiding some of the other spreads that are around you. It's great for you, not so good for them, but it's also, that's where you learn, right? You learn what those guys were doing and what you're doing, and that's part of what this is. I get a lot of people all the time that email in and say, hey, what about this spread or that spread? And the answer is there is no right answer. You just have to try different things. And I know one of our other guides, he even recommended, hey, look, if you're hunting and they're not coming in and they're not quite wanting to land, go out and change your decoy spread around. And so it's always great to hear what's working, for you in your area and your situation. And that's awesome because you have, just a small spread. And it's also proof in the pudding that you really, really genuinely, especially later in the season, don't need those extra large spreads to make it work, right? It gives them something a little bit different, and it sounds like that's exactly what worked for you this week, and that's really awesome.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about calling for a second, right? One of the other big things when we surveyed our followers this past week, they said, hey, I need help. I don't know how to go about the proper calling technique. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper with it. And so the question I have for you is, how do you identify the proper calling technique based on duck behavior?
It's later in the season. I tend to be more quiet, and that was proof in the pudding. These guys that I was out competing with on this pond, I mean, they were hail calling everything. Even ducks that, they were talking to every single duck that came in, and I kept it very short and sweet, nothing long and drawn out, just maybe a couple feeder chuckles and just some comfort quacks, and that was it. I tried to stay quiet as what I'm learning as this season goes, because these birds are so used to getting barked at by every freaking bush that's on the water. So
Sure.
I think it's based on what you're seeing, how the birds are flying. It's all depending on your situation. Like for me, example, this weekend, I tried one day on the second hunt. I was calling a lot, just to let the birds know that are flying in the area that there's some ducks down here, and it kind of worked out in our favor. But once they get closer to my spread, I shut up. I got dead silent, and it seemed to work out for us. So it's just all situational. You just base it off how the birds are responding to you. But I say keep it quiet.
Yeah, I think, and I have to agree. Definitely later in the season, the quieter the better. Because, like you said, these birds are educated now. They've been fired at. They've been called at. They kind of know what's going on, so they're a lot more wary, like you said. And so it's great to hear kind of what's working for you. What, in your opinion, do you feel like is the significance of proper calling?
The significance of proper calling is that's something that I'm still trying to figure out. When and when not to call is very important. And what I'm learning from a lot of different hunters in my area is the significance is really creating an environment of comfort for these ducks. And learning their language is extremely important. You could be mop, and never like, oh, that duck down there sounds sad or angry or distressed. It's the importance is knowing when not to call. That's basically it, and practice. My dad's still working on his calling, and when ducks are in the area, I kind of push his call down out of his mouth because he sounds like a kazoo sometimes. So if you're not 100% calling, you're not comfortable with it, just don't. You'll probably be more successful.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that because I know I'm not the best caller in the world. I'm better at calling in coyotes than I am calling in ducks. So, so I have no
I'm
claim
better
to
talking
fame.
to elk, man.
Yeah, or I can go out and I can go call in a turkey, and it's just amazing. I've amazed a few people in my area with calling turkeys, right? And so, but calling ducks is
Yep.
definitely not my forte. So I tend to be, a little bit more quiet, make something that kind of sounds like a duck, just so they know I'm there, and then I pretty much shut up and then hope that they see the decoys and let the decoy spread do kind of the rest of the work. And that's what I've learned over the years is, sometimes you just be quiet, right? You hit the nail on the head. Just be
Yep.
quiet, right?
Yep.
And just let them finish. Yep, let them do what they're going to do because,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing that's been fun for me, one of our guys, he hunts out in the ocean, so he hunts all sea ducks, and he's like, one thing he said, and it really kind of helped me was, look, duck calls don't work here because they can see you from 360 degrees. They know you're there. They've already made a
Yep.
decision to land or not land, and that kind of translates to where we are too, right? They've already made it.
Mm-hmm.
Once they see those decoys, they've already made their decision. They're either coming in and landing or they're not, right? And so try different things and see what works for you. So
Yep.
awesome. Well, Daniel, man, appreciate you hanging out with me here for a few minutes.
No
Tell
problem.
everybody how they can get in touch with you on Instagram.
Yeah, you find me Mancine Outdoors on Instagram. Shoot me a message if you got any questions, or you're in the Pacific Northwest and you just want to go out and shoot, or you want to get after some ducks or deer or elk or turkey, whatever, or you just have general questions, just hit me up. I'm always available.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. We look forward to having you on another episode. You have a great evening, and thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in and listening.
Greetings, fellow duck hunting fanatics. Eric Wilkes here, co-founder, and I wanted to take a moment and personally thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, make sure you click the link just below this video to go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you get all of our future updates and future videos that we release.